The Timeline is a Blue Wire podcast. Welcome to the Timeline of Phoenix Suns podcast. We are, at least two of us, are recording this in the middle of a dust storm. My name is Mike. I'm here with Sam. Sam, how you doing?
I'm sorry to hear about the dust storm, first of all. That's not, we were just talking beforehand, it's not something I have any experience with. I'm pretty good, man. Preseason basketball has started. I would say everything is going smoothly except for the fact that we hate Australia now. So other than that,
we're in a war now. Yeah.
Other than us wishing downfall to the entire country of Australia. No, I'm kidding. But yeah, there was a preseason game yesterday, and I guess we could talk about it a little bit.
We should. And joining us because I'm very excited to do the Deandre Ayton Internal Development Series. Writer at ArizonaSports.com, host of the Empire of the Suns podcast, frequent radio contributor as well, Kellan Olson. Kellan, how you doing?
What's up? Doing well. Yeah, just not trying to freak out and have anxiety when my house shakes, but we'll see how this goes during a live recording. I'm excited.
I mean, my power's on, your power's on, because it can happen. Power can go out during
I think I read like 15,000 in Phoenix already are without juice. So
is that a thing? Is that like a frequent thing?
Just the wind
as a result of dust storms?
Yeah, totally.
Yeah, the wind. So there is a possibility of postponed by dust storm.
No tornadoes, no blizzards, no snow. Like snow can be pretty for the most part, but driving through snow doesn't seem fun. Not that I would know, but I'm
driving through dust seems kind of like ass too, though.
When I first moved to Phoenix, nobody told me about a dust storm, and for whatever reason, there was like 3 years before I experienced one. And I didn't know what was happening. It was It was a terrifying experience. You'd think, like, as soon as you move to Phoenix, somebody should warn you that there's a chance that you'll be completely enveloped by
like the
dirt and dust.
There was a tweet where it was a picture of a sunset, and it was like the first person that saw a sunset must have been like, "Oh shit, it's over! Like everything's done." It's like the first when you see a dust storm and never heard of it, you think the world is ending and the apocalypse is here. It's
looked
crazy.
Like my first thought was Independence Day, the scene of like the giant spaceship covering the earth.
Yeah.
So I was pretty terrified. Speaking of disasters, the Phoenix Suns lost to Adelaide in preseason.
Ouch.
Game number 1. A team in the third best league in the world, probably. I don't know, the Australian League, fourth best league in the world.
I mean, it depends if we're counting the EuroLeague as like it's just the EuroLeague or 100 million different national leagues. You know what I mean?
That's a good point. Yeah. Well, I mean, not the top. They're not an NBA team. We'll say that. And the Suns came out there and they lost. I mean, the starters, obviously new starting lineup. I think the big story of the game was Monty was just running these sort of line substitutions, taking out the entire starters, putting in bench lineups, trying different things with the bench. My first thought, and I want to see if you guys agree with me or not, is the Suns didn't really play this game to win it. They could have just went out there and ran all the plays they ran last year and just kind of did all the things they did last year. Devin Booker play the whole first quarter. Devin Booker come in at the end of the second and close the second, all of that. Instead, they appeared to be trying some things, which to me is great because we know they can do what they did last year. And I feel like we got a good look at Cam Johnson trying to run an offense, Mikal Bridges trying to run an offense, Deandre Ayton doing a little bit more. But Kellan, what was your impression of that game?
It was just that they were clearly on the experimental phase of just trying everything. And look, something to understand, and it goes directly within the podcast that we're doing and what we've talked about with Deandre a lot. And this is classic Deandre analysis where I say something about him and some people are going to make it think like I'm going after him or saying it's a negative about him. It's not. The reality of possessions when you give Deandre a touch on the post is that like everything kind of just slows down. So they were doing that a lot. They were giving him the ball in the post, but then also just Mikel and Cam running offense. But also Book was bringing the ball up quite a bit. Now he wasn't initiating a ton out of there, like as the primary. The end result wasn't necessarily ending with him, but it was just like Cam was running around the elbow here, Mikel was sending a pin down there, and then he was passing to whoever, And then there were a couple of times where he was just able to score straight out of it. But Book doesn't really bring the ball up a ton, and Chris barely did. Chris actually defended the guy bringing the ball up the court to start the game. I looked, it was one of those things where I'm looking at the court, I was at the game, and I saw Chris like near half court waiting for the ball handler, and I thought like Mikel might have sprained his ankle or something. I was like looking around, I was like, where's Mikel? Because like Chris just never does that, and that's been the system. So Chris did that to start the game, and then Mikel was back on the guy bringing the ball up the floor. They were just doing a lot of stuff like that. And then the way that I talked about it in my column, recap of the game, was that it's like when you watch a 14 or a 15 seed, like Georgia Southern or whatever, in the first 12 minutes of the game, and you're like, oh shit, I need to text everyone I know because they've hit like 7 threes and 4 of them have just been stupid, and like this, you need to turn on this game because it could be one of those where the 2 seed or the 3 seed falls or whatever. And that's kind of how it was at the start of the game. And then the second unit just didn't have anything going at all to kind of hold that back. So then they were down 16. The starters come back in, and as expected, they really showed a little bit more emphasis defensively, and just kind of in terms of their general usage of energy, they were a little bit more getting after it. But then those threes just kept going down. So I think they could have been up by 5 or 10 in those like 7 minutes or so that they played in their last shift. But a couple of those threes went down. They were down 3. And then Monty left it to the second unit. And at a certain point, it just kind of turned into an injury for Sham. It didn't help in the second half. I'm not sure exactly what it was, but it seems like he's fine because he came back in. But it basically turned into this guy dribbles once or twice, passes to this guy, and now Campaign has to do everything. And then at a certain point,
pick and roll with Chuck Landale over and over and over and over.
At a certain point, Cam was just running the offense by himself. And we can talk a bit more about like why that's a good thing, bad thing, etc. But it was just the rhythm of the game just didn't really line up at all with what the Suns wanted to get out of it, if that makes sense. And it just didn't. What they wanted to do with the line changes, what they wanted to do with the first unit offensively, and just kind of how they've been scrimmaging every day this week, every day last week, I should say, every day, and those are incredibly intense. Like they're all over the place, and I don't know if it was a good thing or a bad thing coming into a game like this, but Adelaide obviously was playing like this was their Super Bowl, and the Suns were playing like it was a preseason game. And that mismatch in energy, combined with the game flow of the shots going down and what the Suns were going to do, just added up to the loss. And that's all I'm willing to look at it for now, but I'm also willing to look at the cool stuff that happened and the not so cool stuff that happened from a basketball sense as well.
Yeah. Sam, what'd you think?
My very, very first thought here is not necessarily Suns related. I mean, it's a little Suns related, but it's kind of more so Craig Randall rocks, and I would offer him the final roster spot right now. Not kidding, because he hit, what was it? He hit 9 threes. I think he was 9 for 17.
He was,
from deep. I mean, Jesus Christ.
They shot 54% as a team, I think.
Yeah, no, absurd. And Robert Franks as well deserves a shout out. Both of them scored over 30. I mean, he was just, they were casually at a certain point in the game, casually pulling up into 28 30-foot threes. Just absurd basketball being played, but you got to tip your cap to that. In terms of, I guess, the actual stuff that was going on X's and O's style for the Suns, there's stuff here that's real and there's stuff that's not real. And look, obviously this was a preseason game. I think it's important to emphasize, as you guys already have, that the starters were experimenting, that they also played relatively well, even in spite of doing that experimenting. They all had a positive plus minus in however many minutes they played, and that they only played 20 minutes or whatever, when in a normal game it might have been 30 or 35. So obviously the Suns were not taking this super seriously. It was a preseason game, yada yada. That being said, the stuff with the bench is real in that I have believed for a while the Suns bench to be fairly bad, just because we haven't, like, I think you kind of have to be a little bit blind to not think that the Suns bench in its current state, that is without Jay Crowder, with Cam Johnson now in the starting lineup, and even without Dario Saric as a healthy scratch in yesterday's game.
Josh Okogie was also out.
And Josh Okogie, you have to be kind of blind to think that the current bench is good. Like I think they played worse than expected, but I expect them to be on an average night a negative, and that's a really bad place to be right now. And so maybe once we get to the regular season, they're only going to be giving us stints of 10 or 15 minutes, and they're not going to be stints all at once like those hockey style lineups. They're going to be with Chris Paul or Devin Booker or whoever else mixed in. But even so, the mere fact that we were relying on Campaign to the extent we were, and he actually had a pretty good game offensively, but the fact that was necessary in the first place is a huge issue. And it just makes you think, first of all, when are we going to get Dario back exactly? And what can our realistic expectations be for him? But B, how soon is the Jay Crowder trade going to happen?
Yeah.
And is it at all possible, even if because now what we're starting to hear is maybe the Suns don't want to take on additional salary for Jay. Maybe they want a guy who makes a little bit less money than Jay Crowder overall. But can they get a guy who can dribble a bit? Can they get a guy who can shoot? Because those two things are really going to provide a boost to that bench lineup that sorely, desperately needs it.
Mike, can I add one thing here? Mm-hmm. Sorry to cut you off, but the Dario piece is really important here. Now, the way that I have been interpreting what Monty has been saying, and Monty had a really funny line towards the end of his press conference or his media availability like 4 days ago after one of the practices where he was asked to do an Australian accent, and he was like, no.
He's like, no.
Oh, no.
Good Lord, guys.
He's like, no, I'm not doing that. And then he was like being kind about it. And then he was just like, I just, sometimes I don't realize that I'm doing this, and that anything I say or like do can like be on a video and instantly out there. And then he'd kind of ended up being like, oh, guys, like just like get a life sometimes, And it's like, I am thinking about people like me and people like you two as well.
He's talking about us, yeah.
Who will have like, he'll have one tiny thing he says about a rotation tweak, and then we're like, oh my God, he's going to do this. So
yeah,
that type of thing specifically in mind. A couple of different times during training camp, he just referred to how they're excited about Jock Landale and they're excited about the things that he's shown in camp, and just how they don't want to get ahead of themselves because it's October, like they haven't played regular season games yet, but they like the way that he has looked. And I've just gotten the interpretation with how he's answered questions on the 4 that it looks like if Dario is going to play right now, it is going to be at the 4. And it seems like as of right now, which is October 2nd, 5:53 p.m., it feels like that Landale is like the backup 5 right now. I don't want to put that in cement, to be perfectly clear, but Sam phrased that, and I saw a lot of people kind of looking at it like, oh, well, Dario hasn't been back in a full year and he's kind of getting his legs back, or whatever you want to say on that front. I have not been reading it like that. I have been reading it like he's just not getting minutes right now. So again,
he was bad at Eurobasket.
People were afraid to say it, but he was legitimately bad at Eurobasket. And
I was very encouraged by the way that he moved, and that was it pretty much. And it was unfortunate.
Exactly.
But I just wanted to, as the person who hears everything that he has said so far this year, Monty specifically, that is just the interpretation that I've got, and like just talking to like Dwayne and Gerald on the side, kind of those reaffirmations you look for. You're like, are you reading this right? And we talked pregame, Dwayne and I. And I was like, you read that, like, Landale's going to be the backup 5 tonight, right? And he's like, oh, yeah. I was like, yeah, okay, I thought so. So I just wanted to add that context here as we're talking about the second unit, because I think it was you, Sam, who said you can either view Dario as the savior and he's going to be the sixth man, or you're going to view him for like the spot he's in right now. Like you got to like pick a side here, basically.
You can't have it both ways. Exactly. Yeah. I think there's a contingent of Suns fans who want it both ways. They want to give Dario time and say, let's not levy any expectations on him. But at the same time, they say, oh, it's okay that James Jones didn't do anything this summer. We have Dario back. Well, those two statements are at odds with each other. But look, I think Dario playing the 4 makes sense, but I'm not in love with it. It's sort of just kind of out of necessity, right? Like, would you rather have... I mean, if Dario's going to be playing at the lightest weight of his career, and I don't know exactly where he is right now, but he did feel lighter just moving around at Eurobasket, and it sort of just makes sense for him to be a little bit lighter. Playing at the 4 makes sense, even though the net rating data that we have from his 3 years in Phoenix so far, 2 years in Phoenix so far, would back up that he was always better at center. But the bigger thing is, his competition at center is Jock Landale and Bismack Biyombo, who kind of feel competent. And his competition at power forward, backup power forward right now, until we have a Jay Crowder trade in place, is Torrey Craig and Ish Wainwright.
Yeah.
And that they don't feel super I hate to say it, but like even Torrey Craig doesn't really feel competent right now. I think I would rather have Dario playing the 4 over playing 15 minutes of Torrey Craig per night. I don't know how you guys feel about that.
I did like the, as bad as it was, I did like the rebounding combination of Torrey Craig and Jock Landale. I think they could do some interesting things. As far as how the bench goes, what you talked about, Sam, in their inability to dribble, I just want to underscore that a little bit more. Cameron Payne was doing his thing where he would penetrate. He has a quick first step. He's able to get by the first line of defense. When the help comes, he swings it out to somebody. And they can dribble once, every single player. Nobody can do more than one single dribble into the defense. They can't get by them. They can't do anything beyond that. And none of them are really great shooters at this time. I think Jock Landale was left wide open a few times. We haven't seen him really hit rim yet, I don't think. And if you can't dribble and you can't shoot, that's a problem. And look, not to be super doom and gloom here, but if we had to stack up all of the players, let's say last season, and throw Dario Saric in and just sort of list how good they are, you'd have the starters, you'd have Cameron Johnson, obviously, so Jay Crowder's in there as well, and then you'd have JaVale McGee, and you'd have maybe Cameron Payne. And right now, we're playing without JaVale McGee, we're playing without Dario Saric, we're playing without Jay Crowder. And those are 3 of their top 8 guys that we assumed would be on the team. Yeah. Obviously, JaVale's gone, so that's regardless. But I come back to Dario. I think we saw what Dario was when he's healthy. He's 28 years old. It's not like he's 35 years old. If you have any chance to get him back to where he was when he was healthy and you're not playing him, that just shows an extreme lack of confidence. That does sort of surprise me, because as much as what Jock Landale can do in theory, and maybe they see some things in practice that obviously we don't see, and they have more belief in him. I mean, Dario was, a top 7 player for the Suns the last time he played. And they made it to the NBA Finals. And, it's only been a year and a half since then. So it's just surprising that he's not even getting a chance here to hear you say that, Kellan.
Yeah, he also lost minutes to Kaminsky at times. Like, he wasn't consistently holding his spot. And I don't say this as someone who's like a Dario doubter. If anything, I'm a Dario truther. I just think that everything that he brings on a basketball court is something that you need. I wrote a piece before Eurobasket that aged horribly because he had a really bad Eurobasket, just about how players like him positively impact a game when they don't really do much without kind of emphasizing and just breaking it down really analytically and going into it, just because of all these little plays that he can make all over the court. But with that being said, I just think backlash to postseason. I don't know about you guys on the podcast and when you guys started talking about trouble, because when you guys joined our podcast by the Dallas series, that's when like everything was kind of like, it was really starting to look bad. But like a couple of games in the New Orleans series, Kevin and I were just like, New Orleans looks like the team that's supposed to be super duper deep here. We went into that series like, oh man, like New Orleans got all these kids off the bench, like all these guys we don't really know about. Like Larry Nance is fun, sure, but I don't really know about all these other guys. Like everyone was impacting the game. And you just think about the unit that we saw, albeit in its worst light. You just think about the group that the Suns have right now, and you look at who they faced last year. I mean, Larry Nance, Jose Alvarado, Trey Murphy, Devontae Graham, Najee Marshall. How many of those guys would be the second best player off the Suns bench right now, or maybe even the first? And then we go over to Dallas, which is not a deep team. They had Dinwiddie, Kleber, and Bertans. And even someone like Bertans, who has a clear negative with his defense, like his shooting in that group would be a godsend right now. Because I wrote it in the column last night. I just said there's a lack of scoring, and then I thought about it, well, there's not much shooting either, and then I thought about, well, there's not much ball handling either, and that's why I included all 3. And it's no shots or anything, but it feels like to me right now, the way that second unit is constructed, and again, this is going to go back to how it's going to look so much better when some of the starters are incorporated. It feels like all of those guys, except for Campaign, right now are in a position where they need to be either the fourth or fifth most important player offensively for it to really work with them out there. So when all 5 of them are out there together, it just really gets exposed. And then obviously someone like Landry, who did not have a good game last night, really has to have a bounce back year. And I think for people who weren't thinking about Landry as much coming into the season, that was the type of game, as you guys both sigh, that emphasized like he really needs to have a bounce back year. They're really relying on him in a lot more ways than I think people realize.
So I don't want this conversation. Mike said this like 5 minutes ago. I feel like this conversation feels very doom and gloom. So I just want to emphasize that these problems are fixable. We're talking about the bench. Yeah.
Can I pitch some things, some trades?
Yeah, if you want to. Yeah, because just let me just emphasize here. Yeah, these are fixable with trades that would be, I think, in theory, not too difficult to achieve. We're not talking about some grand fix in the starting lineup. We just need a Craig Randall type, if you will, off the bench, someone who can dribble and get some buckets for sure.
And
go ahead.
And I think that even if the bench plays, let's say last night is an F, like that's just the worst the bench is going to play, right? Mm-hmm. If they get a D+ to C- from that group this year, I still think they're going to win the most games in the West, to be clear. So for all the energy you guys
think they're going to win the most games in?
Yes.
You think assuming they're health, right?
Yes, assuming health. Assuming health is average. They were phenomenal 2 years ago with health. They were not good with health a year ago. Somewhere in the middle, then yes, they're going to win the most games in the West. I think the starting 5 is going to just murder teams, annihilate them.
I agree, and they can split those guys up.
I do agree
even
with that.
Mikal Bridges on the bench would have been like a huge thing for the team.
Yeah, the net rating for that group is going to be like 13, 14, 15. Like they're going to kill teams.
Yeah, I think
Mike,
the offense could be really great.
Pitch us your trade.
Okay, well, let me just gauge where you guys are at right now. Are you at Jay Crowder and Landry Shamet for Duncan Robinson level of panic yet?
Oh man, I mean, I don't like that. Kellan, what do you think? I don't like that.
I don't like that.
What does that solve?
I don't like that.
It's kind of like when the Mavs traded for Bertans. That's how I was looking at it, which didn't really work until it did, which was in the playoffs and they killed us.
Campaign is still entirely all of your dribble penetration.
Yeah, but at least you have some shooting. They have no shooting either.
I would rather give up 2 unprotected first-round picks or lightly protected first-round picks or whatever protected picks. I would rather dip into the pick basket a bit and get someone
I think the answer is
good.
What about one pick? What about one pick? Or maybe, I don't know, maybe you can find a way to do it without the pick. But those same two guys, Jay Crowder, Landry Shamet, and find a way to get Eric Gordon on the team. Are we there? How do you feel about that?
Yeah, I've been there.
Yeah, me too. I'm tired of seeing Landry Shamet dribble once and then dribble behind his back as if it's going to do something, and he's just fully walled up. He cannot get by anyone.
I'm really serious when, I mean, I'm not going to go into the whole Shamet thing because people should know how I feel by now. But I am very serious when I say, like, it's preseason. Why isn't Dwayne Washington Jr. playing? You know, like, just why isn't Frank Jackson playing? I don't know.
Game.
I would try.
It was one game.
I know it was one game. I would try other guys. Like, I think Dwayne Washington Jr. can dribble and hit a pull-up shot, and I don't think Landry Shamet can do that.
Landry Shamet's biggest asset is that his contract is non-guaranteed. Yeah. You know, there's money that you can get off of in that contract in the future. I think you probably have to.
I would already be looking at the contract was a mistake from day one, but it's history now. There's nothing we can do about it. I'm just saying I would be looking already at other options internally. If there's any type of internal fix there, I would be looking at it already.
If we get to midway through the fourth preseason game and Washington has only played garbage time, that is when I will start to hear out complaints. Like, people were tweeting me about it last night. Like, ask about why Dwayne Washington Jr. didn't play. It's like, well, Monty has said the same thing. He has said the same thing pre-game, post-game, the day before the game. He was saying the same thing, which is like, it's going to be really hard for me to get all these guys. He told us, I wanted 18 guys on this roster. Now I'm glad we don't have 18 guys, honestly, because it's really hard to find the playing time for these guys. He should give Landry the first full go and all those guys first full go, but Dwayne Washington Jr. should get in the mix here in the second, third games. And then if he doesn't, if we're at the end of the preseason and he's only played garbage time, that's where I'm like, okay, like, and especially if Landry keeps looking like this, then that's where you start to go, okay, like, at least give the kid a look before the games are real.
By the way,
final part of the Eric Gordon trade. Sorry, I just want to make sure that I throw this in there. Signing Carmelo Anthony to replace Jay Crowder on the bench. So your bench essentially now has 2 players who could at least shoot in Eric
Yeah.
Gordon and Carmelo
I'm there.
Anthony. This
I'm
is
there.
all theoretical. It's not. I'm not even sure if it's possible.
I'm there on Melo. I would take Melo for the final roster spot without an Eric Gordon trade, and I think you would improve, honestly, at
I
this
do
point.
too. I do too.
By the way, we've been shitting on Landry for 5 minutes, and I just think it's important to note that Damian Lee played 20-plus minutes last night, and he was really bad, too.
He was.
So it wasn't, it
Torrey
wasn't
Craig
just
was
Landry,
bad.
But
Yeah. I mean, I would say that Cameron Payne was fine. He wasn't terrible. Jock Landale was fine. I think you can kind of see why they like Jock Landale. I don't know if the shooting is real or not, if they continue to give him those above the break threes. Like, just not sure if you can keep doing that. But you could at least see what they like. Outside of that, I think everyone else was basically a disaster off the bench.
Landry is like 6 steps ahead of where all of the failed developmental players the Suns had in the last 7 years are, where we already know what the NBA player version of him is, and the good NBA player version of him, because we've already seen it. And then we know that there's another level or two he can take to his game that is in his bag. The talent, the skill. It's not like he has to develop these things. They're already there. He just needs to go out there and
You're saying he's already peaked.
No, I'm saying
you're saying
we're on the downward slope.
We're on the
saying
internal regression Landry Shamet episode.
I'm saying he's a high floor, low ceiling guy, despite being someone who, when I thought he got here last year, I was like, we know what we're getting. He's going to shoot from 3 really well, and if you get the other stuff, great. And we didn't get the other stuff, and he didn't shoot well from 3, so it was a really rough year for him. Carmelo, by the way, I didn't really think about it at all, but I'm really thinking about it now after this game. It's just the lack of offense.
The Suns still have their.
Really starting.
I have not thought.
TPMLE.
I'm exactly in the same place, Kellan. I would have dreaded the idea of Melo a month ago, but I mean, I'm thinking about it for sure. I would take him.
I was kind of, Sam, I was kind of in on it from the beginning of the offseason. I just think he was kind of good for the Lakers last year, and I think he'll be fine. Let's switch over to things that actually looks pretty good, and that, I think, the 2 things that stood out to me were Mikal Bridges, who just looks huge, by the way, and Deandre Ayton. I think both of them were incredibly impressive. Mikal Bridges showing some sort of intent to drive to the rim. The defense was there. He seems to be chasing rebounds. Deandre Ayton dunked a whole lot in a short amount of time and was insanely efficient and just looks really great. And I would say that those 2 guys appear to be in great shape. And if they start the season in really great shape, I think that's going to make a really big difference for the Suns at the beginning of the season. Kellan, what do you think?
Yeah, I mean, to kind of make it more simply, they were the Suns' 2 best players by a pretty discernible margin. I think all 3 of us would argue that if they have 15 nights this year where 2 of those 3, out of their 3 top players, it's those 2, then they're going to be in a really, really good spot, because most of the time in that top 3, it's always going to be Chris and Devin. But if there are nights where Chris and Devin aren't even in that top 3 because Mikal and DeAndre are playing so well together at the same time, then that's really impressive. And I think there are people who, on the Mikal side, will say because of his defensive value, he's always in that top 3, but I think there's just a lot of offensive nights where he needs to contribute more. And then with DeAndre, I think we just know the story there in terms of consistency, even though his value as a rebounder and a defender, as a guy who takes up a ton of gravity, is always going to provide a certain amount of value. But there's obviously that extra, whatever you want to call it, 30%, 60%, 120% left, for them to untap in terms of how much they can impact a basketball game. And Mikal showed it last night. I was out on the court before the game, just kind of getting down the rhythm of who's out there when, just in case I need to watch someone before a game for a specific reason. Also, just pay attention to what guys were doing, and Mikal was doing a lot more off the dribble stuff, with shooting and going through Brian Gates's fake ball screen kind of stuff, doing that, and Cam Johnson was doing that a little bit more. And I've noticed from watching Book over the years that stuff, while it's not completely indicative, there are little tidbits and tea leaves here and there. So I definitely do think that he's going to be on the ball more. It's just a matter of how much he can do it. It's the same thing with how much they tried to incorporate DeAndre in the offense when Chris got here. It's how much is it going to affect the rhythm of the other guys, because Chris was still able to get to his 11 assists or whatever, but it's also against an NBL team where they literally have zero chance of defending a ball screen with him and DeAndre never. They could have 4 defenders, it could be 2-on-4, and they would be screwed still. They'd be screwed. So I'm really interested to see if we get... It's never going to be as heavy as it's going to be in these preseason games in terms of how much it is on those 2 guys. But I am curious if we do see some version of this in the first 5 to 8 games from a rhythm standpoint, how much does it hold up? Because I think that's the thing that people cast aside too easily is like, it's not just if Kellan and Deandre can do this, it's a matter of if they can do it, and the machine that is terrific and just won 64 games can still keep spinning in the same ways, because you are changing the identity of the team a little bit, but in a really positive way that is worth the gears not spinning well sometimes, because as Monty said, like, just by May, just figure it out by April, and that's fine.
There's also a difference between like Mikal Bridges, kind of running some of these pick and rolls, or working on the off-ball shooting, or not off-ball shooting, on-ball shooting rather. There's a difference between him doing it where it's Devin Booker specifically taking this sacrificial role and kind of standing in the corner and utilizing his shooting gravity. That's one thing that you could argue might interrupt the rhythm and the flow of kind of Booker and Chris Paul as the season gets going. It's another thing for Mikal to be able to go through that process with, say, Damian Lee in the corner, if he's really starting to be worked into those bench units and bench lineups, because I think as we progress, that's really how we're going to be able to work these guys in and get them as many reps as possible, is once they start kind of staggering them and leading bench lineups as the number one, number two options. But I think it's just obvious that Monty understands exactly what those guys need to do in order to offset whatever decline we're going to get out of Chris Paul and whatever negative performances we get from the bench. It's all about, the self-creation abilities of Ayton, Bridges, and Cam Johnson. And so that's why it's so important that it's an emphasis.
Yep. And there's going to be more basketball soon, so we'll come back and talk about that as well. Let's take a quick break, and when we come back, we'll talk about the internal development of Deandre Ayton. All right, internal development for Deandre in the last episode of our internal development series. Very, very excited about this one because I think that Deandre Ayton, like Devin Booker, had a pretty fascinating season last season. So we get to dig into what was his last season, what we can expect from him going forward, and all the weird stuff going on with Deandre Ayton right now, because as weird as media day and the few days after was, he seems to be relatively back to normal now. Let's talk about who Deandre Ayton is as a player right now. Kellan, when you think about Deandre Ayton, what comes to mind for you?
I hate that you started here because I listened for full just so everyone listening, we did this last year and you asked me the same exact question at the start. So like, this is kind of messed up that you're making me kind of repeat myself. And it's a really
as far as people know, we could just be playing last year's episode right
exactly. The place that I'll take this is that it's just really interesting where we're at with the discourse for him, minus, like, let's not even talk about the Monty thing and the contract thing and the offseason, all that kind of stuff. Just like the on-court stuff that we saw. We were coming off of his incredible postseason last year, and all three of us, I believe, kind of agreed that they should give him that 170 or whatever it was, that they should have given him, quite honestly, that they didn't, that led to him getting the 133. And he was just incredible in that postseason, and now we're coming off of a season where he showed internal development. The tagline here, we'll get into some of the specific things that we saw from him on the court that lead me to saying that. And then we get to the New Orleans series, which was the best basketball he's ever played for the Suns, where he was, oh my God, is this guy going to make like 6 All-NBA teams and that kind of thing. And then we got to the Dallas series, which was a mixed bag, but just was a lot more of a negative, I think, based on how crucial he was to that series. Now, they did not lose that series because of him. They lost that series pretty much because of the way everyone played. But I think that the blame and just like the attention on how he played was really shifted on him because of him, rightfully so, being labeled by people like myself as the X factor going into that series. But there were even moments, guys, during those games. There was one game in Dallas, I want to say it was game 4, when it was like he's the only thing they've got right now. Like it's just him, and they've got nothing else really going for them right now. I believe it was game 4 when he had 20 points and 9 rebounds, if I'm looking at the numbers correctly here. But those games were, or sorry, that was game 5. Game 4 was 14 and 11. Game 3 was 16 11. So like mere box scores. I'm not remembering off the top of my head which one of those games it was, but when they were kind of floating between being down 6 to 12 points, they were able to just get the ball to him in those little spaces on short rolls that we're going to talk about, where once he catches the ball within 12 feet now, it just seems like he's going to be able to turn it into a bucket now. He's got like the arsenal already that's developed there. And I think that's kind of what I've been thinking about the most leading up to the podcast, is those kinds of moments when the guards don't have it going, or the scheme is set in a certain way where they are in, for lack of a better phrase, damage control moments, because 2 or 3 different times in that series, again, emphasizing that I didn't think he played all that well in it, he kept them afloat. And if one of the guards would have just been able to kind of turn it on for a bit, I think they would have been able to win a couple of those games, to say the least. But he was offensively, in some of those moments, he was still that guy in the New Orleans series, just for little patches, not the whole games like he was in New Orleans. So now like it turns to kind of like this year, and I just wonder if he can find success off of that, because I think all three of us, I listened to only like 20 minutes of the podcast or so, not all of it, but we kind of all were
shut it off because it was boring nerd talk or some shit.
I just realized we were going to talk about some of the same things, so I didn't want to like I hate repeating the ssame thoughts over and over again for the people who've been listening to your podcast for many years now. But it's one of those things where I just kind of look at it and say, I think all three of us were not there last year in terms of saying like this was the breakout moment and he's going to make 14 All-Star teams now. We were just like, okay, like let's see it, but we know like what the standard is now. And for me, it's not even that anymore. It's just like the level of impact. We know where it is, but specifically I think offensively, because defense has been like so solid now for 2 years now that it's been pretty great. Great to awesome for 2 years now. The offense is the part where I'm like, okay, if he can get to not even good to great, not good to great, that's kind of low, but like that great to awesome tier again, where you're getting that level of contribution offensively a little bit more consistently, then I think he's a lot more closer to being a top 3 center than we think about. Again, talking about the guy where consistency is the number one issue, but I think if we really go internal development-y with the podcast here and go all the way inside the layers, I think that he's like a lot closer than people think to being that guy, which I think has led to some of the frustrations that boiled over the last like 6 months.
Sam, what do you think?
Yeah, so I'm going to echo probably a lot of the stuff that Kellan talked about, but I just think, when we're fans, Kellan's not a fan, but when the rest of us are fans, there's a tendency to think about the best case scenario. And as we've talked about Deandre Ayton a million times in the past on this podcast, as we've done this episode, this series in the past last year, I think we've always kind of focused on like tantalizing potential or whatever. But even like his finals run was great, but there never was. And I think this is what Kellan was talking about. There never was that moment. I think the New Orleans series unlocked something this past year. Like that was a milestone achieved.
Yeah, even in the Denver series, I think, where he averaged quite a lot of points, it just wasn't in the same way as the New Orleans series.
The Denver series was a milestone because Deandre Ayton went toe-to-toe. Like, I think I listened back to last year's episode, too. We talked so much about defense, and I think so much of that stuff is still relevant. Like, I think you said specifically, Mike, that it was as of last year that you thought of Deandre Ayton as more of a defensive player. That he was good at both things, but you thought of him as a defensive talent, which was not necessarily where we expected him to be based on where he was in his rookie season. And I think all of us said last year, hey, maybe put money on this guy for Defensive Player of the Year, which, by the way, as an aside, is why I think it's so interesting that eventually Mikal Bridges kind of ended up stealing that narrative. The Denver series was interesting because he went toe-to-toe with an MVP, held his own, played 38 minutes per game, never got in foul trouble once. And he scored points too. The New Orleans series, he took the second most field goals on the Suns. By the way, it's still incredible that Chris Paul averaged 22 points per game and 10 assists or whatever he did in that series. Like Chris Paul had such a ridiculous series there too. But Deandre Ayton was legitimately on a team that won a playoff series, the number 2 option. He self-created a decent amount of those looks. And he was also just a rock-solid defensive impact as well. He was a two-way star. And it was a new milestone achieved in a way that it wasn't talking about or wasn't framing the discussion anymore as let's talk about Deandre Ayton and his potential. That was a star in front of us. And now it's just about kind of how can we sustain that, and how can we continue to bring the best parts out of him throughout a whole season.
Yeah, it is fascinating to think about it, where we were coming off of the season that he played where he averaged 14 points when we recorded our episode last year, which was at that point a career low for him, and just how solid he was defensively in the finals year. There was just so much to be happy about when it came to what he, like, it doesn't really matter in some ways what he did offensively because he was contributing so much defensively on a regular basis. But then I think this season comes. He averages 17 points this last season, 10 rebounds, 10.2 rebounds, 1.4 assists, which is just kind of what he does. 0.7 blocks, which we can talk about what that means or if it matters at all. But all of that, 17 points on 65% true shooting percentage. Now, when we talk about how he did that, it's pretty fascinating because he had 76% in the restricted area. So he was hitting 76% of his field goals there. 59% in the paint, but not in the restricted area. These are stats we went through a lot this last season. And then 45% from mid-range on 2 attempts per game. Like, not a small number of attempts. Like, enough that he was doing it a few times a game. And shooting 45%, which is like a legitimate field goal percentage on mid-range attempts. And something that I think when a defense tries to take things away from Deandre Ayton, that's what they do. And look, I know what this is, but he took 19 threes above the break threes and shot 36.8%. I'm not going to say that means he's
Is this the year? Is this the year, friends? Well, are we going to see him launching 7 a game? I don't think so.
It's funny because Monty talks about him working on corner threes, and that's just like a mid-range shot almost for him. Do you guys know how many corner threes he took last season?
0. I saw it today.
He didn't take one, right?
0. Yeah. Just 0 corner threes.
It's because I looked at his player page 2 hours ago.
Yeah. He didn't shoot any. Like, it's funny just to think about that. But his touch is something that has been talked about a lot with him. That is what he came into the league. He came into the league with great touch. And, of course, we've seen that every year of his career. He's just been so great around the rim. But this was the year, I think, where he started extending that touch further and further away from the rim. We had the floater, which he's consistently making, which is a sort of non-restricted area paint shots. And then, of course, the hook shot. And I think those two things sort of changed what he can do in either post-ups or on pick and rolls or when he's just sealing in transition because he can shoot the hook shot. It basically turned him into somebody who was making a lot of wide open shots to someone who, when there was a single defender on him, he could consistently make a shot over them because he had a move or two that he can go to over and over and over again. And I think that is really what transformed his game this last year. It's pretty remarkable to see. Kellan, what do you think?
Yeah, so I pulled up the numbers. It was 66.7%. I think you guys had it in your video for the hook shot. And then when I went through the play-by-play data, like how the NBA.com, if you've never gone through NBA.com's like tracking stuff, they break down every shot and label it like by the type of shot it is. And one of them that they have down is I believe it's like standing floating shot. I believe is what it's called, floating jump shot. That's what they have it as, which is pretty much.
I want to know. I really want to know. By the way, I want a video like the behind the scenes of who works with that tracking data and who are the culprits who are sitting there watching every possession of basketball
just
and
deciding
logging, this is a floating jump shot.
I think it's synergy. I think they just use tracking.
Synergy.
Yeah.
I think, but I don't think it's an automated process. I think they use grunts. Like, I think there's some grunt for $15 an hour who's sitting there saying, this is a spinning 360 flailing alley-oop. And like,
how much an hour again?
Yeah, I know.
I don't know.
Where do I apply?
I would do it.
I was about to say.
I'm just saying.
I need to
continue, Kellan.
I need to send an email or something. Jeez. 30 for 45 on those floating jump shots. So he's not necessarily taking one every game by any means, but he took 22 of those in his first 3 seasons combined. 22.
Yeah.
And then he
it's doubled a layup
that
for him.
plus 1 in the regular season last year and shot 66.7% on him. And I think the main challenge with him has always been I mean, I can do the stat head thing right now and show you the amount of centers who have averaged 20 points per game when they take under 3 free throws a game. It's pretty much like Vucevic, and like that's it. Like there's really no one that really does that. So you just look at him for the type of player that he is, and you say like, okay, how can he still be an offensive option? And it's these kind of touch shots in those areas, and how do you get him those shots? It's the short roll stuff. And I think like the very first game, like it happened, Sam was like already on it at halftime, and was like, Deandre Ayton has scored 4 of his 6 field goals today in the short roll. And I was like, dude, I didn't even notice one of those. Like, what are you talking about? And then I watched him back at halftime, and I was like, yeah, okay, yep. And I watched in the second half of that game, I can't remember who it was against, and I was like, oh, yep. And then you just started seeing like, exactly, that's how you get him in those touch shots kind of range with the hook shot, with the short floater, that kind of things, is using him in short roll. And then you kind of get to the point where he's confident enough in those spaces where he starts to use his dribble more. And we get to the New Orleans series where he was 18 of 23 from the field when he dribbled. 78%, which is crazy.
That's a stat.
I had the video highlight. I actually like just randomly remember because I had like 30 minutes before leaving for my flight to come back to Phoenix that night, that morning after Dallas, after the New Orleans series when they won in New Orleans. And I just remember putting that video together just as something I wanted to get done because it was a really huge part of the series. And then it kind of became this thing over the summer where like Pacers fans or whatever was like, this is the Deandre Ayton we're getting. And like it was just like, it kind of became like by default this hype video for him with opposing fan bases. And I thought that was really cool because he should be viewed as that type of talent for people. And just by comparison, that is a 23 shot sample size from 6 games of basketball. But in the regular season last year, he shot 55% on shots where he dribbled. So it was a 23% bump in terms of just the hyper elite efficiency that he can reach over a playoff series, which is what matters over everything else, is like that short little window. And the fact that he did it was really remarkable. And it just, by the way, 55% for the super high true shooting percentage that Mike was just mentioning. Imagine if we look at these numbers this year, Mike, and he's shooting like 62, 63% on dribbles. It's like, how high is his true shooting percentage going to get then?
Yeah.
Like it's just crazy to think about the offensive upside that he still has as a player that's in his 5th year in the league, which is where I get to the part where, hey, it's pretty fucking awesome that Deandre Ayton keeps getting better at basketball every year. Isn't that great, Suns fans?
Yeah.
For as much as he frustrates you and as much as his first bucket last night was where he got like hacked on the arm and he didn't finish through the guy, he faded away. Like you can keep looking at those possessions all you want, but he keeps getting better, and more specifically, he's adding tools to his game where it matters, because not only did he get these shots kind of down, these hook shots and the push shots down, he figured out where to get them, which is in the short roll, and then he figured out how to make that better for the rest of his game, which was off the dribble. So I just think he had a way better season last year than I kind of thought about, to be honest, like 3 months ago, because we were looking at it like, okay, you have to go prove to them that you deserve this money. And we didn't really get the prove it season by any means, but again, the internal development-y thing where we go into the layers of it, I think that he had a really good year. And I personally, like, after looking into it the last couple of days to get ready for the podcast, just forgot like how excited I am to kind of see, okay, what is it going to be this year? What is he going to add? Like, everyone goes to threes, but what else is there that maybe we're not talking about? It was like the slips last night. He was slipping a lot more, and it's like, okay, is it now beyond short rolls 14 feet out? Is he going to start dribbling from 20 feet out? Like, I'm really excited to see where it goes.
And he slipped 10% of the time last year, I think, what the stat said. So not a lot.
Yeah, and I think, a big product of that being Chris Paul, and it's hard to get Chris Paul to trust you enough where he would rather have you slip the screen as opposed to come off and snake it himself, because he knows he can get that shot anytime he wants, and he knows that's already a good shot, right? So but in order, Booker. you need to build quite a bit of trust with Chris Paul and Booker as well. One thing I want to clarify on what Kellan is saying, like the 18 for 23 stat when Ayton dribbled, it's just like, and I think you'll agree with this, but you don't have to. That's such an amazing stat, and that's such an amazing percentage. The expectation doesn't need to be that Ayton sustains like as good of a true shooting percentage this year, in my view, if he starts to dribble and if he starts to take on more of a burden as a dribbler and as a self-creator. The expectation actually should be that his efficiency decreases, because that's what we usually see.
Unless the free throws go up.
Unless the free throws go up. That's a good point. But like the average player, as they take on more of a burden in terms of creation, we're going to see that true shooting percentage go down. That's okay. And in my view, it's perfectly okay if Deandre Ayton regresses back to a 60% true shooting instead of 66 this year or whatever. But he's taking on more responsibility as a creator, because ultimately that's what you need to get past the hump. Like it's the most important thing.
It's a complicated thing, I think, for Suns fans to really wrap their heads around, because we spent the entire offseason, you and I, Sam, talking about how the regular season just doesn't matter as much anymore after what we saw last year, and how preparing this team for the playoffs is all that matters. But then everybody panicked after a single preseason game where they were trying a bunch of new things. And there's some level of balance with fans where they have to realize that for players like Mikal Bridges, Cameron Johnson, Deandre Ayton to get better, there's going to be some speed bumps. It's not going to be perfect every single step of the way. But to Kellan's point, like Deandre Ayton just continues to get better and better and better offensively. And like if you look at him, and of course free throws notwithstanding, that's going to be a conversation we're going to have in a little bit. But if you look at him, basically everywhere offensively, he just got better last year. And you talk about a guy that's like 65.6% true shooting percentage. That's usually run and dunk guys. And he just, more than any time of his career, he just wasn't that this last year. He was shooting mid-range shots. That Pelican series, his mid-range shot was absurd. It was like every single time it was going in. He was shooting floaters. He's talking about the hook shot.
61% there for the exact percentage from the mid-range in that series. Yeah.
You talk about the hook shot, Kellan, and the dribbling that he was doing in the Pelican series. The confidence that he built up in that hook shot in the regular season turned into him taking 3 or 4 or 5 dribbles before shooting that hook shot in the postseason.
He was taking,
like you could see it happen.
He started taking like fadeaways too. He would remember the fadeaway he hit on KD 3 years ago, and KD was like, "What the? Like who the? Like who is that?"
Classic.
Kid?
Classic.
And there's little plays here and there where I kind of just like pick up on the reaction that he's getting from his teammates. Like in this article that I wrote before the Dallas series, in that video thread, about 55 seconds in, he gets it on the short roll, he catches it at the free throw line, and it's so fast to where he's already dribbling and moving before the defense is even reacting. So Jonas is covering Chris Paul on the ball screen, and he's coming back and he's getting in his stance as DeAndre is getting the ball. DeAndre catches it, dribbles to his right with just one dribble to his right, immediately gets to that spin move to go to his left, and then takes a fadeaway over Jonas. Jonas is overbearing him because he's out of position, and he gets the and one, and the guy out of his seat on the bench is Devin Booker, because he knows that's exactly what we need, is like decisive, instinctive basketball from him. And not to bring up someone who's in a bad light right now with Suns fans, but Jay Crowder told me back in like March, I want to say, when I was talking to him about floaters and just the way that he kind of plays basketball, he's like, I don't like think about what I'm doing anymore. I just react. That's it. Like I'm just reacting now. And like that seems to be, from my very, very novel understanding, as, hey guys, did you know I've never played in the NBA before? Whoa, shocking. I know. Isn't that crazy? I've never laced them up. The understanding
you're pretty tall, Kellan. We've met you.
The understanding that I've tried to gain from these guys in terms of like the levels that they reach and how the game changes for them, it seems like the react part is a really big thing once you get to your 3rd, 4th, 5th, 6th, 7th, 8th year, like however deep you have to get to start to get to the point where you're not thinking anymore, you're reacting. And that is like DeAndre catches that ball and he's just reacting. One dribble, spin move, boom. Like I'm there. It's not even that he's going into like, as he's short rolling for that half second, he's not like, okay, maybe I go to the spin move here. He's not even thinking about doing the spin move. He just did it. And I think that's like a really important thing to highlight with his game, and just how it all comes back to the usual conversation with him, and how you guys had a ton of podcast episodes. We had a bunch of podcast episodes where we honestly like didn't think he was coming back, and a lot of that had to do with consistency. But we will say, and where we will focus the episode on instead of the consistency conversation, because that's really boring, is that the base for the consistency just keeps getting better. And then, of course, once the consistency comes, that's when he's making 6 All-NBA teams, and he's one of the best centers of his generation. But until we get there, the base is getting better, and that's really important. And you can't just be a troll and say, well, like he doesn't dunk, it doesn't matter. Well, but like as long as he keeps improving at the thing below it, then it still kind of matters, and I think it really does.
It's almost unfortunate that he came to the Suns after like Amari Stoudemire. Just the react thing that you're talking about, Amari was like that from the moment he got to the NBA.
Yes.
He just reacted.
Yes.
And
but
that's
Amari,
not normal, for guys to be like that right away.
But on the other hand, Amari, even after 10 years in Phoenix, never mastered the defensive reactions.
No,
and,
that's exactly right.
We've arrived at a point with Ayton where I think that thing that you were talking about with Jay, Kellan, like DA kind of got there last year with the way guys talked about him. It's like he kind of figured out the defensive aspect, I think, in year 3. Not that he's perfect now or anything, and we can get into it. We can nitpick defense eventually. But he kind of got there first in year 3, I think, and then year 4 is when a lot of the offensive stuff started to come, and now he kind of, the base is that he's a two-way impact player.
The best thing is when you get
great.
the reacting before the thinking, and then you get Poku. It's like he didn't even get the thought process down yet. He just reacts, and it's incredible when you see it.
It really is. It's one of the more fun players to watch who's just not very good because you just never know.
This is the year, I believe.
Yeah. Can I just say about Deandre Ayton? I think this is an important point that's just been overshadowed. Last year during Media Day, there was a storyline about Deandre Ayton working out 4 days a week or whatever. Like that was like the story that people latched on because everyone's weird with stuff about him. And this year, there was a more obvious storyline that just appeared out of Media Day, and that's that he seemed angry, and him and Monty Williams hadn't spoken, and there was all that. But the other part of that I think has been overshadowed, and something that I've been wanting to bring up is just every single person that talked about him talked about how he was working his ass off this summer, just working in the gym every single day. And for Deandre, as much as people love to talk about him, that's just not how people have talked about him every single offseason. And in this one, coming into this season, they did. And I think that's an important point to make for him because his focus, his determination, his work ethic, if you even want to put it that way, which Mikal Bridges has not always been perfect. But this year, the fact that everyone in this media day came into it talking about how hard he has been working, I think is the most excited I have been about seeing him play going into this season.
Well, for sure it's true that after you go through the process of making the NBA Finals and losing, right? So you've got heavy expectations because of that. After you have 4 years in the NBA, after you've earned a near-max contract, nobody's giving you the benefit of the doubt anymore, right? Like nobody's going to take it easy on you by virtue of being young or on a bad team or whatever. People expect big things out of Deandre Ayton, and so for sure, Mike, the fact that they were talking him up like that was not a given whatsoever. It's a really good sign because honestly, at this point, like it should be a base expectation that DA is able to handle his shit. And so for him to go the extra mile, it's going to take even more out of him for people to notice. It's a great sign.
Did you guys know that he has a new diet?
No.
No. Can you what do you know?
Is it not eating tacos every day or something?
Do you want to know why you don't know he has a new diet?
Why?
Because immediately after I asked him what is the Mexican food that gives you quarrels, and he told me it was carne asada fries, he got asked about Monty Williams. So we're 2 minutes into the scrum, and I'm like, oh, great. Yeah. Like, can write about DeAndre's new diet. Like, this is great. Yeah. Like, a typical training camp storyline. Like, and he's, like, taking another step forward. Young players have this thing all the time where, guys are going vegan when they play with Steve Nash. I'm thinking about this, talking about carne asada fries, and then I blacked out for 5 seconds. I was like, what did he just say? They haven't talked at all? What? So, I just thought that was a funny tidbit to the conversation.
Let's transition into how he can improve as a player, because I think, talking about him coming into this in media day and how weird it is and all of that, we can get to that in a little bit. But I don't know. I'll start with Sam this time. I won't set you up, Kellan, like I did earlier. What is the first thing that comes to mind for you when you think about improvements for DeAndre? And as we talk about this with Devin Booker, it's the same with Ayton. As we get to better and better players when talking about how they can improve, the improvements and what you want get so specific to what they can improve because they're so specific to how they fit into the team. So feel free to be as specific as you want.
No, I mean, it is kind of a lot of the stuff we've been talking about already, though. Like, I wrote down here, one of my bullet points is just, I noted his drive statistics, like how many total drives he logged. And the finals year, he logged 15. Last year, he logged 20. I wrote increased from 15 to 27, LOL, in parentheses, just like, not that
season.
effective.
Yeah.
For the whole season. So he had 27 drives last year for the whole season. Which was almost double the year before. So from that perspective, in raw percentages, we're talking about
we should get at least 60 this year then.
That's an 80% increase or whatever. That's great. But 27 total is still not, especially for a guy. Another stat I looked at is Ayton was, and I guess as we start to get like into maybe specific things that he can really improve on here, I noted that Ayton increased. He went from 20th the year before to 10th last season in elbow touches. The Suns run elbow plays all the fucking time. And for Ayton, like, how are you going to get those drives? Some of it has to be short roll stuff. I think we've already talked about the short roll stuff. If you guys want to continue to expand on it, by all means, feel free. But also just turning a lot more of those elbow plays. I think this is something we talked about last year. Turn more of those elbow plays into drives and find ways to get to the basket and get fouled and don't just fall back on the face-up jumper so much, especially if Monty continues to run these plays for you. I think that would maybe kind of assume that in the back of his mind, he's thinking that there's something that Ayton can do there. There's some kind of offensive potential that's not being reached. But we just haven't really seen it yet compared to some of the other guys who lead the league. Like, for example, Ayton averages exactly as many elbow touches per game as Joel Embiid. That doesn't mean I expect him to become Joel Embiid, but, to give you an idea of the type of volume there, it's a little bit of a waste for him to just go dribble handoff all the time. We need to see more out of that position and out of those sets.
Mike, you go first.
Kellan, what do you think? Oh, you want me to go first? Okay. Let me just talk about this. I think that people in the NBA, players in the NBA, coaches in the NBA, are going to be a lot more aware of how good Deandre Ayton was last year offensively when scouting for him this year. And Deandre Ayton gets the ball in the post a few times, 5-6 times a game probably, maybe a little bit more. 33. I did look this up. 33% of the time on the left block, 46% in the middle, 21% on the right block. We all know he likes the left block, and then he gets it in the middle as well. This is, of course, what we've been talking about. Of the top 50 players in the NBA in total post-ups last season, Ayton was second to last in free throw rate after Vucevic, a player that you mentioned earlier, Kellan Olson. So when you're talking about what he could do in the post, first of all, finding ways to, I hate to say it, bait fouls, and Embiid is so good at it, and just being more aggressive on the post-ups will help. Having said that, I do think that Deandre Ayton is going to be doubled in the post more this year than at any point of his career. And I did look this up. Only 8% of the post-ups that Deandre Ayton had in last season yielded even a potential assist. So not just an assist, even just a potential assist. So at the end of the play, when Deandre Ayton posts up, 92% of the time it does not lead to a potential assist. So when you have Deandre Ayton sort of running the offense through the post, if he starts to be doubled, the way the ball moves out of that double, starting with the pass that Deandre Ayton makes, could lead to a really great offense, or it could lead to maybe not so great. He tends to turn the ball over a little bit in the post. And having said all of that, I think instead of posting him up over and over and over and over again, maybe we should just do the short roll thing like over and over it, like 20 times a game. Just give it to him in the short roll instead of posting him up. I think he wants to post up, and Kellan, you talked about how it tends to slow things down. I don't know, maybe we're past that a little bit. Maybe we should just start working on the other things that he's improving on so well, where the difference between points per shot in the post-ups to what he was doing in the short roll is dramatic. He's a lot better in the short roll than he was in the post-ups. Am I crazy in thinking about that, Kellan?
No, I don't think so, because I'm kind of on the same point you are, where I think that they just need to let him get into the bag a bit more, and just, it doesn't matter where it is, it's just letting him get there. And specifically, like, looking at stats that we can look at ourselves at the end of the year, I had you answer first there because I was unprepared and I thought of this 3 minutes ago to look it up. I looked at his field goal percentage for shots that he dribbled on for all 4 of his seasons. And he was at 55 last year, like I mentioned. Year before that, 52. Year before that, 53. His rookie year, 55. Rookie year, you'll remember he was featured a lot more in the offense than he is right now. And it's somewhere around like a fourth of his total shots, like somewhere around 20 to 25% in terms of the total shots that he takes are ones where he dribbles. And I just think that I want to see those numbers at record highs. I would like to see the percentage of his field goals where he dribbles at an all-time high, and then I also want to see the efficiency at an all-time high. Now, the second part might be more difficult, and Sam kind of alluded to it. Like, look, if the percentages efficiency-wise go down, but he's being more aggressive, then that's fine. I agree. But I think that he's shown the capability to pull off that type of transition.
Wait. To be clear, you want the efficiency on the dribble shots to be at an all-time high, or the overall efficiency, like everything?
I want the efficiency on the dribble shots to be at an all-time high, which should have his efficiency at an all-time high, to be clear, because then he's just like, it's 0 dribble shots, which means it's just mid-range jumpers, which he's been taking forever now, and then like the dunks around the rim where Chris just gives it to him and he's wide open. And then I also want the percentage of his total shots that are on dribbles. So like on shots where he dribbles, I agree with that. It's like 20 to 25% of his total shots are ones where he dribbles. Mm-hmm. And I think like getting that to 30 isn't crazy. Like I correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't think that's crazy. And again, if that means 2 more touches on the block a quarter, I think that that's for the betterment of the team, because we clearly saw in the New Orleans series, like, yo, if you get this guy with healthy Chris Paul and Devin Booker, you're not losing to anybody. I don't care what it looks like on defense. That's an offense no one can stop. You're not losing to anybody. So if you can find some way, yeah, exactly. If you can find a way to like recapture that, and then we're talking about just one of Mikal or Cam being able to do a little bit more dribble stuff, then it's the best offensive team in the league by a mile. Yeah. So I just think from an internal development perspective, that's the area I'm looking at, because yes, we can all sit here and say the free throws, but I think if he does the dribbling the way that he did in the New Orleans series and we don't see them go up, we kind of already saw it in that series, because I believe that he averaged like 2.5, 3 free throws a game across those 6 games. So even when he was really aggressive with the dribbles, it was still sort of that mid-range spot. And to everything that I'm talking about right now, this has kind of already happened so far, because he went from 36% of his total shots being from the mid-range 2 years ago, which is probably a bit lower than people were expecting, to 55 last year. And a lot of that had to do with the 5 to 13 foot area, which again, the floater, the hook shot. So he's gotten the shots there now. It's like when Mikal doubled his mid-range attempts last year. It's like he knows how to get there and take the shots now. It's just a matter of Deandre doing it more consistently and getting the opportunities too.
I want to clarify too. I'm not saying Deandre Ayton should never post up, for the record, but if the Suns can find a way to perfect the short roll with Deandre Ayton catching the ball in a slip, and basically countering exactly what led to their downfall in the Dallas series with Devin Booker being trapped over and over and over again, the level of chaos that brings to the offense for the defense that's trying to cover them is massive. I don't think it's a coincidence that Deandre Ayton had his highest scoring, most efficient season, and it was also the most he was assisted. He had the highest level of assisted field goals in his career last season. When Deandre Ayton posts up, it's still pretty efficient. He's actually one of the better post-up players in the NBA. But when he posts up, he's really the only one involved in that action. If the Suns can find a way to create a play where Devin Booker and DeAndre Ayton are the 2 players involved in that action, and they're both part of the pick your poison version of that play, where DeAndre Ayton, if he slips, if they're trapping Devin Booker, he catches it in the middle of the floor. He can either attack the rim with one dribble, pass to a shooter, or like he did last night in the game, pass to a cutting Mikal Bridges. He essentially becomes a version of the Warriors. Like, it's sort of a version of what they did on that short roll of Draymond Green catching it on the short roll. And look, I like the idea of working on his post-ups because I think there's an element of, if everything else is falling apart, give it to the ball, Deandre Ayton in the post, he'll score every other time, basically. But I don't think that it fully benefits them in the same way as if they just put a ton of effort in trying to really work on that chemistry between Devin Booker and Deandre Ayton, and then getting Deandre Ayton to dribble once, get more free throws out of it, and maybe increase his assists to like 3 assists or 4 assists. That's asking a lot, I know, in that short role. As far as playoff basketball goes, I think that would make a bigger difference than just giving him the ball in the post over and over and over again, where everything just kind of slows down and stops.
I think you're talking about pretty much a general modern basketball philosophy, which is that playmakers are always more valuable offensively than play finishers, which is not something I disagree with. To be fair to the play finishers, though, they still need to exist, and there are good play
really
finishers.
Good at it. Yeah.
There are good play finishers and there are bad play finishers. And so, look, I'm not going to disagree with you at all, because I absolutely do think that the short roll stuff is really important. I've been saying it for 3 years or 4 years or however long he's been in the NBA now. But just to be fair to his post-up game, he was 76th percentile this last year. That's mostly because of the hook shot. That's good. 1.04 points per possession. I guess you could, argue like a good short roll is going to be more efficient on a points per shot basis than that. That's fine.
And it was for him.
It's just there's a good version of a post up and there's a bad post up. And I think it's also important, by the way, that for a player who's giving as much to the Suns defensively as Deandre Ayton, you need to continue to reward, and not just Deandre Ayton, but again, philosophically, any play finisher. We're talking about what motivates these guys to continue to finish plays if they're not going to get the proper respect or the proper spotlight for doing so. If we're going to frame the entire conversation in a way that says playmakers do all the work, play finishers, they just finish the play. That's easy. Anyone can do that. We need to motivate the play finishers. We need to motivate them for having the motor on defense and rebounding and running the floor hard. And when you have a guy who has Deandre Ayton's body and his speed and his skill set, who's able to seal so effectively early on in the shot clock occasionally, you need to reward him. And, so I think he's going to continue to get those post-up plays at least a few times per game. It's just there's a difference between a decisive seal in the middle of the floor early in the shot clock. That's an easy 2 points before the defense can get set, before the defense can even bring over weak side help.
Yes, the transition post up essentially is a great example.
Versus, okay, there's 7 seconds left on the shot clock. We got nothing. Let's give it to DA in the post. Yeah. He'll take 2 hard pound dribbles, not really move his guy anywhere, and then shoot a turnaround fadeaway. There's a big difference between those. Are both post ups. Both of those things are post ups. But I think philosophically they're very different on a basketball court.
The best future of this team, the best possible version, assuming the core guys don't change, is turning Deandre Ayton and Devin Booker into players that fully optimize each other. Because as much as Chris Paul does what he does, there's not a version of the Suns, at least as currently constructed, that we've seen that can handle when Devin Booker gets trapped over and over and over again. So figuring out their synergy, assuming those two players are going to be the best players on this team for a long time, which who knows with DeAndre, and it's been a weird week, is I think really, really important. And I'm not overly convinced that DeAndre Ayton post-ups, even if he starts learning how to pass out of those post-ups, is the best way to optimize Devin Booker on the other end of that. And I don't know. It's just it's something that's been in my mind a lot lately that maybe I'm not fully articulating well, but I do think that Draymond Greening DeAndre and at least trying to see it the best way possible, because essentially the way Devin Booker is guarded in the playoffs is like Steph Curry at this point. They're just trapping him on every ball screen and trying to find a way to Draymond Green DeAndre and on offense is just going to be, I don't know. Maybe his passing is not quite there.
I understand what you're saying. You got to walk it back from the Draymond Green expectation, though. I know that's not the expectation, but
it's just he's the one who plays like that the most.
I'm just trying to think of like who's a prototype of because I guess my point is we can feed him in the short roll. He's going to be much more effective than Draymond as a finisher out of the short roll. That's for sure. I guess I can't think of like who's a prototype. Who is he following in the steps of here?
I don't know.
Someone who maybe has shown flashes of vision throughout the first few years in their career, but it's never really played a central role in their offense until it needed to be at a certain point.
His decisiveness to the rim almost has to be more important than his passing in those scenarios, just like you talked about, because of the level of finisher he is as compared to somebody like Draymond Green. Draymond Green's a genius passer. He can't get to that level. He never will. And that's not his fault. Very few players do. But it's just something that I've been thinking about. Kellan, do you have another thing that you want to talk about as far as what Deandre Ayton could improve on?
It kind of has to do with conversation, but I'm going to say the most, as the kids say, out-of-pocket thing on this episode by far.
Okay.
I think that ESPN's exercise of ranking players on a year-to-year basis kind of actually pointed out the whole Deandre Ayton thing pretty well. They really, in my opinion, they overranked him after 2 years ago, the finals run, which was understandable. I think they had him in like the low to mid-30s, somewhere around there, and that's because a lot of those people hadn't seen him play in the regular season much. They see him in the playoffs, and he's incredible, and they put him in that rank, which is fine. And then in our opinions, I think we all three agree, like, he had a better regular season last year than the year before, right? And then from a playoff run...
Yeah, definitely.
From a playoff run standard, that first round was pretty freaking amazing. And I know Dallas wasn't that great, but if you compare it, it's not too far off. It's worse. It's a worse playoff outing overall when you combine the two rounds, but he was still pretty good. And they dropped him like 20 spots and put him like 55th.
Oh, really? Well, I didn't even see that. I try to ignore those now.
Yeah, you should. We do it on the site, so I see them anyway. But
content.
Yeah, exactly. Hey, guess what? You know why they do those? Because people read them, and you know why we aggregate them? Because people read them. It's just the world we live in now.
Guess what we're creating right now? By the way, hashtag
exactly.
Are people going to Are people going to read more of a 2,500 word feature where I got to talk to Mikal Bridges and Cam Johnson one-on-one tomorrow instead of that? I don't know. We'll find out tomorrow. We'll find out, or tomorrow or Wednesday we'll find out, I guess. Hopefully it's a yes, so I can keep doing stuff like that. It's not that I can't keep doing it if it doesn't do well, but, it helps when it does better,
I would rather read your 2,500 word column about carne asada fries, but neither here nor there. Please continue.
I'm hungry now. Thanks.
That's really the dream. Yeah, I'm ordering ice cream or something after this for sure. But to that point, I brought that up and people are like what do you mean? What's like the point here of everything? What I'm trying to say is I think we see the player there in terms of like the top 30 to 35 player, which is, I know it's just a number or whatever, but you think about if you've ever done it before and actually like ranked the players, because I feel like people say like Anthony Edwards isn't a top 7 shooting guard over. It's like, who are the 7 shooting guards? Can I please see the 7?
Yeah, right,
you just need to do it. And the top 20, 30 of the league is just insanely stacked right now. It's crazy. Mm-hmm. So to have anyone in like the 30 to 40 kind of range is like really complimentary. And I think that he is more in like that 40s or kind of 50s range like right now as a player. But we all see like the capabilities that he can be like in that 30s range if we see that playoff guy a little bit more consistently in the regular season, or more so we just keep seeing him in the playoffs. And then if he's just better for sure, not just a little bit better, but better or significantly better in the Dallas series, we're talking about him differently too. But I just kind of thought that the way that their exercise kind of dropped him 20 spots randomly when like there wasn't a drop off in his play. If anything, he was better, just kind of encapsulated like the way that he's viewed as a player really well. Like I actually thought it did, if that makes sense. I don't know if that made sense at all. I hope it did.
Yeah, I think you said something like that on our podcast before, where he could be one of the best NBA or one of the best centers, but that doesn't make you one of the best players in the NBA. It's a complicated thing with that position. But I also think, you're talking about watching him on a day-to-day basis, watching every single game. The reality of Deandre Ayton is you have to wonder if he's going to bring it on every single night. I think last year he did more than he didn't, more than any other point of his career. My question for both of you is, after seeing what we've described as angry Ayton, or whatever you want to, Alejandro
revengeful
Ayton,
as he
revengeful
said.
Ayton, yeah. Does that and his sort of whatever you want to call it with Monty make you more or less confident that he's going to bring it on a night-to-night basis this season, just knowing what we know about Deandre Ayton? Sam, I'll make you answer that question first to not set up Kellan there.
No, sure, that's fine. I mean, it doesn't necessarily worry me in the sense that we've now had a few days of training camp, and preseason game, and Ayton looked good in the preseason game, and I've seen him joking around with all the teammates. So I'm not actually worried chemistry-wise about all that stuff. I think to what extent Ayton actually takes this quote-unquote revengeful mindset to heart, or vengeful, I think it's the actual word, vengeful mindset to heart.
No, we got a word now. It's revengeful.
I was thinking, is revengeful actually a word? I think it's
I don't
just
think
vengeful.
so, but it is now.
To what extent he actually takes that mindset to heart, I don't know. The issue is everyone's like, oh yeah, being vengeful. I mean, it would be great if he just plays like Shaq all the time and dunks on everyone and then throws the ball at their head afterwards. And I don't know like exactly what the mental image they have of like a vengeful Ayton would look like. But the problem is it can be great in some ways. It can also be self-destructive though sometimes, and it can lead to certain withdrawal. Or withdrawing from the game in certain ways. One example, I feel like we've talked a lot about offense today, and I think we should talk a little bit more about defense, at least for this portion. Like, mostly not in a sense of how can Deandre Ayton get better on defense, because actually I think he's really, really good at this point, and I think he's proved that throughout not just the past one season, but the past 2 seasons. I think year 5 is interesting for Deandre Ayton defensively now, and because specifically the reason the Suns need him to be in the right headspace. For basically all of Ayton's career up to this point, other players have bullied him. Or bully is a strong word, but like other players, Chris Paul has had to like tell Ayton where to be and get on him, and like even when, you know, maybe people don't necessarily want that to be the case, like people are kind of trying to show Ayton
he's giving up 4 to 6 feet where he shouldn't around the basket.
How to do the work. Are you saying that in reference? Are you saying that in reference to the preseason game or just in general?
No, just in general. It's just when he's 8 feet from the basket and his man's there and he's not boxing him out, and then that guy's under the basket. It's like, why are you giving up that 6 feet? Yeah.
Absolutely. Physicality, box outs, that's definitely stuff that we can talk about. We can hone in on as improvements.
But that is a focus thing, though, I think.
But I think overall, Ayton's earned respect at this point. We know he can play inside. I'm talking defense right now, right? We know he can play inside. We know he can play outside. I want to know if we're at a point where Ayton, what being vengeful on the defensive end means in terms of communication, how that affects his communication with his teammates, and if we're kind of at a point where Ayton patrols the defense night to night on a possession to possession basis. Like, can he kind of boss everyone else around for the first time in his career? Is he the defensive captain? Yeah. Because to this point in his career, I think he's had a demonstrated defensive impact, but it hasn't felt like he was the defensive captain. And I would almost like to see that vengeful energy manifest itself kind of in him taking ownership of that in a new role this season on defense that I think we haven't really seen before.
It was there. Revengeful is a word, by the way. I looked it up.
Okay, cool.
That was there on offense in the Adelaide game. It was not there on defense to start the Adelaide game by Deandre Ayton, I would say. But Kellan, same question to you. After seeing what you've seen, you're right there with him. You're actually looking him in his eyes as he says these things. Does that make you feel more or less confident in his ability to bring it on a night-to-night basis this season?
2 things. For Sam's point on just like the leader stuff, this is a very small window to look through, and it cannot possibly indicate a ton in terms of what's going on the court. But from our perspective of being media members, he was by far the most accountable player when things were going wrong last postseason when talking to us. He was like, yeah, we're not talking on defense. I don't know why. He would say these things, and I would be like, someone's saying the things. Like Mikal does sometimes. Chris and Devin weren't really getting there, which, again, it is everyone's decision to decide how they want to speak to the media and what they want to say and what they don't want to say. But he was just like, at certain points, when it got bad in one of those Dallas games, either game 4 or game 6, can't remember which one, it was just like, he was just like, this is just unacceptable. Like, all of this is just... And I was like, exactly, yes. Like, we just hadn't heard it from even Monty, because Monty has always had that type of way where he just, like, it's learning from it and just kind of keeping the ship in the place where it is, and not just overreacting in the moment to really anything. Because, again, we're talking to him like 10 minutes after the game's over. So you have to keep that in mind when we see a lot of those quotes. The second thing is I cited the same thing when I wrote about how his mood or whatever you wanted to classify it as, just in terms of the way that he came across. Like, I have seen him talk hundreds of times by now, and I will use that same fact to present that I didn't really get the revengeful thing when he talked. I didn't really have that be a takeaway from that for me. And I think part of that just has to do with how, not often, but I've heard him say those types of things before, and this is not a way to dunk on him and say that he's always said this stuff and he's never done it. I'm just saying that these are the types of things I've heard him say before, just with like his personal mindset, how he's approaching the game and things like that. There wasn't like a discernible difference to me, and that's just my opinion, and you guys have your own, and the listeners have their own as well, but that was just my opinion on it. But with kind of all of that in mind, it goes back to when they lost in the finals, and he said he went over to Book's locker and said, like, this is the standard now for us, like getting here and winning here, like that, this is it. And that sort of goes back to what we're kind of talking about here in terms of a revengeful, what he's got to do. The thing I tease with Mikel and Cam, part of it I talk about how those guys need to be leaders more because Jay's gone. And the way that Cam Payne talked about it is, I believe 2 days ago, Cam talked about it like, Jay bridges the gap between the younger guys and the older guys on the team.
Yeah.
Like, he was really able to do that. And there are just sections of like the team where Jay's dynamic is going to be just not missed, but it's just going to be noticeable that it's not there anymore. And while I mentioned Cam and Mikel as guys who have to step up as leaders, like Deandre obviously has to as well. So I think that leadership is such a dangerous word. It's so like narrative based. We talk about it with like quarterbacks all the time, and it drives me nuts when we talk about quarterbacks in specifics. Like Kyler Murray's like weird and he plays video games. It's like, have you ever seen Russell Wilson do anything in your entire life, or Tom Brady or Aaron Rodgers? Like, all these guys are just weirdos. With that in mind, Deandre just does have to be it's just everyone has to naturally be more of a leader. I'm trying to say this in a way to not criticize the way that he wasn't a leader before, because I believe that he was. And think back like 4 years ago when we were in Flagstaff and Monty was talking about how like Monty, a lot of the quotes that came out of Flagstaff were like him talking about Deandre being the defensive anchor and just how he's got to be the guy who's talking the most and all that kind of stuff. And then we fast forward to now, it's like, yeah, he's the guy that talks all the time on defense. He's the guy who anchors it. Like, he does that now. Like, that's what he does. So I just think that it's a very natural progression for him, and I think he should be able to handle it just fine.
Yeah, it's year 5. You know, this is sort of, if we're going to see it at some point, yeah, I agree with you. I think that I choose, I guess in a way, I'm choosing to be more confident in him, because I do think that like having a little bit of an edge, and I don't know how long it's going to last or if it does, it's something that would be good for him. It would be good for him to take things a little more personally. It would be good for him to want to prove himself more and more. I think that's the type of thing that's motivated Chris Paul and Devin Booker throughout their careers, being doubted. Things, we saw it with Devin Booker after the Adelaide game. That's the types of things that motivates these sort of psychopath competitors. And so for Deandre Ayton, I know a lot of people are like trying to come at the vibes for the Suns. I'm not one of those people right now, at the very least. I'm not saying that it can't go badly. I think there are worlds where it can go badly. I think more from a talent perspective than a vibes perspective. But I don't think that Deandre Ayton, from everything we've seen of him, is going to be the guy to be like this anchor on the team holding them down. He's just not that guy.
You mean in a negative sense?
Yes, in a negative sense. Yes,
yeah.
Exactly. Not letting them move. Yes. And so, I'm choosing to be more confident in him based on it. Look, part of it is just him having an edge, and the other part is just knowing how hard he worked. And I think that's actually probably a bigger part of it, because it's just a different conversation than years past when talking about how hard he worked in the offseason. So I'm very, very much looking forward to it. I think, Kellan, you put it succinctly earlier. He's improved every year. He's gotten better at basketball every year. Last year was the best year of his career. He's probably going to get better again, and I think he definitely can. Sam, did you have any? I know we're already getting kind of long here. Did you have anything else you wanted to get in on Deandre Ayton?
I mean, what are we talking? Like weakness wise, I don't think so.
Yeah,
no.
or confidence. There's
If we're
somewhat of a
fully,
defensive conversation that we could have, but I think we've probably had enough of that.
I mean, the defense was great. I have one actually good defensive stat to throw out that I didn't get to use. I don't even know if it's worth inserting here 90 minutes in. But just like, I'll just say it because fuck it, why not? People like positive stuff more than negative stuff. Anyway,
yeah, it's good way to end.
Luka shot 18 for 43 against Ayton in the Mavs series, which I think is kind of important to underscore. Like, that's 42%. He only drew 6 free throws against Deandre Ayton in all of the possessions that he was matched up against him. I know, like, people say don't use the NBA's website's data for this. Sometimes it's not the most reliable, but like on that number of possessions with that sample size, 43 field goal attempts to only 6 free throws is really good. And you look at all of the players who Ayton matched up with the most in the playoffs, even as we lost that Mavs series. Jonas Valanciunas shot 44% against Ayton in the playoffs. Brandon Ingram shot 38%. CJ McCollum shot 22%. Jalen Brunson shot 29%. These were the 5, including those 4 that I just listed in Luka. These were the 5 guys with the most field goals attempted against DeAndre Ayton in the playoffs. Just in terms of his defensive impact, he was there on the perimeter. He was not the reason that they got cooked by Luka Doncic. That reason was very much, it was a variety of things. It was very much Christopher Emmanuel Paul, but also I think that's
Monty
his
Williams.
I think that's his middle name. I can't remember. It was also Monty Williams. Even to an extent, Ayton did a better job on Luka than Mikal Bridges, I think, on a lot of those possessions overall. And I think the data would reflect that too, actually.
Jay Crowder has pretty good data for that as well. I don't know if you saw that.
I did not see that particular one. There is certainly still the issue of drawing Ayton too easily out on the switch, and then especially in a season where we're about to start Cameron Johnson at power forward, not being able to then collect the defensive rebound. Of course, that's going to continue to be an issue for this team potentially, depending on how the lineups work. But I mean, Ayton, he's got the full defensive bag at this point. And just I guess to put the cap on this conversation, if he brings the motivation there, if he brings the vengeful spirit, we're going to see, I think, another season of vast improvement potentially.
Yep. Kellan, do you have anything else you'd like to add?
This is where I get in my Monty Williams bag and have the quotes about holding him to a standard and challenging him a little bit. I want to see more defensive games out of him, not at Western Conference Finals Game 4, but in the same vein, because one of my favorite interactions I've ever had with Monty was in between Games 4 and 5 of the Western Conference Finals, and I asked him it's a really short list of guys who have ever been able to dominate games in that position before, where you're the back line of a ball screen. Like, it's a very, very small list, like not even of just guys right now in the league, but just ever. And DeAndre did it in that game, in a Western Conference Finals game. And then he just he gave me a really thoughtful, succinct answer just on how DeAndre's grown and like what else like needs to come and all that kind of stuff. And it's just more of a challenge to seeing that guy a couple of games in the regular season where he just completely dominates the game defensively, because we've seen it at the highest level of the game already. And I think it's not unreasonable to expect it a little bit more at this point, because we talk about him like, is he a better offensive player than a defensive player? And it's been pretty convincingly defense for the past 2-3 years, ever since he got to a certain point where he reached a good level of defense, like midway through his second season or whenever you want to say he hit that line. But I think that he can reach even higher highs on defense than we kind of discuss. And I think we can see that in playoff games as well. I didn't have any of those games in last year's playoff run where I just thought he was dominating defensively. I thought he had plenty of games where he was good, great, really, really good defensively, but he didn't dominate a game. And I just keep going back to the word dominate, not for the dominating pun or anything like that, but just because that game where he was switching out on the Clippers guys, he was grabbing rebounds. It was the rock fight, 86-81, whatever the final score was. He dominated that game. Dominated it. And it was like the most important game of the series, and he dominated it. So I just keep going back to that. And as a reference point, again, to quotes Monty has all the time on DeAndre of the standard and everything, like he can do that in big games. Like when they have these big matchups against the Clippers and the Warriors on ABC or against Milwaukee or whatever, like that's where we could see one of those games. Like have a statement game defensively like that. He's capable of it.
I appreciate that we're all pretty hyped, and I do appreciate you reminding us the importance of holding him accountable here at the end, Kellan Olson. We appreciate that. Last question for you guys real quick. How many corner threes do you think he'll make this season?
I think that's a false flag. I don't know. I don't really believe that that's a thing they're going to do.
He didn't shoot any in Adelaide.
I'm going to go with 0. I just don't think that's a thing they're actually going to do. But Kellan, are you more optimistic on that?
Not even one?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean,
I like it. It's
false
bold.
flag. I think that's a bluff.
False flag operation by Monty. Kellan, what do you think?
8.
I'm going to go with 10. Just a little bit more than Kellan.
It just seems like going to 25 is crazy after he literally hasn't been shooting threes at all. It's just crazy. It feels like we can get to a realistic spot if this is actually the start of it. Again, he keeps getting better. Maybe the number will be higher in 2 or 3 years, but it's going to start.
I think they're going to try Mikal Bridges in the short roll with Deandre Ayton in the corner, and Mikal Bridges can make that pass. So if they're coming off of Deandre Ayton in the corner, they're using Mikal Bridges in the short roll, I think he's going to shoot a few of them.
All right, maybe 3. Can I amend my answer to 3? I think he's going to be clear. I think he's going to take a lot of above the break threes this year. And when I say a lot, I mean
more than 20.
50,
he took 19.
50. Yeah, he took 19 last year. I mean 50. Nothing.
That is a lot. Yeah, okay.
But corner threes,
for him, that's one a game.
I need a guarantee from the both of you.
Okay.
If they have a game this year where they suddenly break out that we're using Mikal and Cam as screeners game, you guys need to have a breaking edition of the podcast right after the game.
An emergency
you guys
podcast?
have been talking about this for I think beyond even basketball existing itself.
They did it with Mikal last year. It was a lot more than I thought they would.
They did it
still
a little bit,
Cam,
but if it's seriously something where the doofuses like me and a lot of people listening, not the guys like you, are paying attention and seeing it, it's oh my god, you guys have to have an edition of the podcast that night.
All right, I promise. Kellan Olson, Reed, you said you sat down with the twins, right? That's what's coming out soon?
Yeah, I did a fun thing with them where I talked to one of them on Thursday and one of them on Friday, and I asked each of them the same exact questions, and I wanted to see how much they matched, how much they didn't. And that's not really.
It's the newlywed game.
Yeah, that's not really how the story turned out, but I just wanted to see how it worked that way, and it turned out pretty great. And I learned a lot about how they got close, and just there's an answer at the end from Cam. Both of them are super duper thoughtful guys, but Cam in particular was outstanding, and I'm sure a lot of people tomorrow are going to tweet at me being oh, the puff piece after they lose to Adelaide, very nice, you're still in Sarver's pockets, and it's meanwhile Sarver, it does not even I'm waiting for those replies, and I just hope the people listening at this point can promote the piece if they can, because I think it's going to be one of those days where people are still mad about a preseason game, and it's can we sad. Just look those at the two guys sad. Who are just genuinely great human beings and have a great rapport about them and just appreciate that instead of the preseason game? You can tell I'm dreading this. I told Kevin almost can we not run it for a week?
We will do our best. We will do our best, Kellan, to prove you wrong there. We will come out in force to promote your piece.
I know you all follow Kellan Olson. If you don't, just go follow him right now. Read everything he writes on ArizonaSports.com. Listen to the Empire of the Suns podcast. Kellan, thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks, guys.
For over a century, Johnny Walker has shared its bold spirit with the game of golf. Now, crafted with Devereaux Golf, Johnny Walker introduces the Johnny Walker Blue Label-inspired Sunday Golf Bag, elevating the game with sleek design, blue label hues, and refined gold accents. Celebrate your hole-in-one with a premium Sunday bag crafted by Devereaux Golf. Submit proof of your achievement to johnnywalker.com/blue-in-1. Please drink responsibly.